Hello students, this is our fifth class on PGDBI and today's topic is Java Basics. In Java or in any programming language, there are certain basic things like tokens, keywords. So what is a token? Token is a smallest element of a program which are identified by the compiler. Tokens in Java include identifiers, keywords, literals, operator, and separators. Identifiers are the names of the variables, methods, classes, packages, and interfaces. For example, you have written integer, any variable name, so that variable name is the identifier. Whereas the keywords are the reserved words which has predefined meaning in the compiler. So two basic terms, identifier and keywords, and they have again difference. Identifier is user defined, keyword is compiler designed or already in the compiler. User need not to do anything with that. User cannot change the meaning of that keyword. An identifier, actually, since it is defined by the user, user has every right to change the identifier according to its the programming need. And there are certain rules for identifier also. Like identifier must be 32 characters long. Identifier can have numerals as well as alphabets. That means it is alphanumeric. And some special characters are also allowed in identifier like @ underscore, etc. So if we are talking about the tokens in Java, it is having different types like keywords, identifier, constants, strings, special symbols, operators. Then very basic question, what are the different data types in Java? Java has total of 8 types of data. These are the numbers like byte, short, integer, long, float, double, character, and boolean. Each and every data type are used in different situations. Mostly the number-based identifiers are of the type integer. An integer is 32-bit integer. You can see here the range of the values. It's around 214 crore negative to positive 214 crore approximately. That means that much of numbers we can accommodate in integer type data. In this number, you can see there are 3, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 digits are there. So that is the range. If it is beyond that number, beyond that range, then the programmer will go for long integer, and which is 64-bit integer type. That means just double of the integer type. There are characters for storing any name or any kind of string, and boolean. Boolean, actually it's a type of the data which stores only true and false values. That means logical data is declared using boolean data type. And for storing the fraction numbers, float and double, that means the 5th data type and 6th data types are used. So here you can see how data are stored in memory. This is a 32-bit register. In this register, there are ones and zeros, and this is the fashion, this is the way how data are stored in computer memory. Variables. Variables are actually some entity where you can store some data. As I have told you, in programming, variables are implemented using identifiers. In general mathematics, there are two types of things. One is variable, another is constant. Constant is what its value is fixed. Variable whose value changes. But here in this programming scenario, both variable and constants are of the same type, like both are nothing but identifiers. So in Java, Java uses variables to store data. To allocate memory space for a variable, JVM requires three types of things: to specify the data type of the variable, to associate an identifier with the variable, and optionally, the variable may be assigned an initial value. And above all done as part of variable declaration. That means variable must be declared before using it, and variable needs initialization also. Suppose you have written integer a and a is not initialized, then a may store some garbage value from the memory. And without initializing, if you are printing the variable, that variable will give you some garbage data. That means some wrong data minus something, minus some byte values, memory values will come. So it is always suggested to initialize any variable with 0 before storing the actual data. So variable declaration is the first step. Second step is variable initialization, and third step is variable data allocation, data storage. That means programmer will store the data into the declared variable. Here is the general type of the or general form how to declare a variable. Its data type, identifier name, and is equal to value. That means this is the initialization part. This part is optional part. That's why it is kept in bracket. But in general, data type and identifier name must be there. There are different types of operators in Java. A rich set of operators are there in Java, like assignment operators, arithmetic operators, relational operators, logical and bitwise operators. These are the arithmetic operators. Plus, minus, into, divide, all are arithmetic operators, arithmetic assignments. And other than this, there may be some combination of operators like plus equal to, minus equal to, star equal to. So these kind of combinations are also there. Plus equal to means b, suppose b plus equal to expression means b is equal to b plus expression. So if the previous value of b is suppose 5 and expression is 2, so 5 plus 2, 7. So new value of the variable v will be 7 in this case. So this way there are 5 combinations of arithmetic assignments. Arithmetic operators, these are the general arithmetic operators: plus, minus, into, divide, and this is the modulus. That means integer remainder. That means 10 modulus 3, 10 divided by 3, how much? It's 3 into 3, 9. 1 is the remainder, so 1 will be the integer remainder, and that will be the answer of this operation. If here OP1, that means operator 1, and OP2 is operator 2, if we are replacing it by 10 and if we are replacing this by 3, the answer will be 1. Relational operators. There are 6 relational operators: equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and these are the signs, symbols. And one variation is there only. In general mathematics, greater than or is equal to is written actually in different form, but in programming paradigm, this is written in this way. That means greater than, and after that equal sign. So this is there. And another difference is here, double equal. Double equal means single equal is assignment operator in programming, and double equal is the equals to, and it's a relational operator. Then we have logical operators. There are 6 logical operators. Here are the logical operators: AND operator, OR, then double AND, short circuit AND, then short circuit OR. This is OR. Then this is NOT, and this is the logical XOR. So here at this point we are not explaining the details of all the logical operators, but it is important for some programming, specific programming. We have bitwise operators. These are the bitwise operators. So in your syllabus, this type of operators are not there, so we are not discussing it here. Then we have control statements. Yes, that is very important for any programming. There are 3 different types of control statements: selection statements, iteration statements, and jump statements. Selection means, suppose from one point, if we are having 3 options or 2 options, which option we will choose, that depends on certain conditions. So that is the selection statement. What is iteration statement? Iteration means if a certain statements are need to be executed number of times on the basis of certain condition, then that repetition actually will create a loop, and this type of loop runs on various iterations based on some index values. So that index values are also known as iteration, and that loop will terminate only when the condition will become false. So as long as the condition is true, the loop will continue. So that is the meaning of iterative statement or iteration statement. And jump statements. Jump statement actually, jumping means jumping from one statement to another statement. And sometimes from one statement, programmer jumps to the next statement, skipping some of the statements. In that case, that will be a forward jump. And if the programmer jumps from one statement back to the previous statement, then that will be backward jump. And backward jump actually results repetition of some statements. So that is done using break or continue statements, which is there in Java. And there are 3 iterative statements in Java: while, do while, for, and there are many conditional statements like if statement, if else statement, nested if statement, switch case. These are the selection statements. And here are the explanation about selection statements. I have already told you people what is the main motto of these selection statements. Suppose in this diagram, in this flowchart, you see this is the control coming to the test expression. If it is true, then it is coming to this part. This is the true part of the if statement. And if the condition is false, then it will go in this way and it will execute the statements, and then it will go to the next statement. and from the true block also it will go to the next statements. So ultimately what we have got here, a test condition will be checked, and on the basis of that, if it is true condition, then it will go in this way. If it is false condition, it will go in this way. This is if else statement, and next to that we have if statement. In if statement, control is coming in this way. Here we are having the test condition. If it is true, then it will go to the this part. It will have the true component. If it is false, it will just skip that and it will go to the next statement. So this is if statement. So in if statement, only one option of option. The false option do not have any statements to execute. It is directly going to the next statement. But here in this case, if statement, you can see after the test condition is checked, either it's going to the true block or it is going to the false block. So there are two options in this case, and here in the if statement there is only one option. Then we are going to the iterative statements, iteration, and this one is a simple iteration statement. Same thing, test condition. Then if the test condition is true, then it's going to the body of the loop. It is executing this part and it is coming to the test condition again. If it is true, it's coming to this way, this way. So it is actually creating a loop here. And if the condition is false, then it is going through that line and it is ending up the loop. So this is actually the flowchart of while loop, and do while loop. Do while has a special characteristics. You can see here from beginning, if you see the starting of the control signal is from this point and it is going to the loop. So without checking any condition, it is entering into the loop. And at the time of exiting from the loop, it is checking the condition. So if at the initial level the test condition is false, even then it will execute the loop once. So that's why this is a special case of iterative statements. So this is a do while statement, and here it's the for loop. For loop is very much used, and let me tell you, in iterative statements there are three basic things. One, the initialization of the loop variables or loop indexes. Number two, condition checking, condition must be there. And the third is increment or decrement of statements. That means your iteration variable or index variable must be incremented or decremented on the basis of your programming. Otherwise, initial value of any index variable, suppose I is equal to 0, and throughout the loop execution, if the value of I becomes 0 only, then it will execute only once. So for different values of the index variable or iteration variable, the loop will execute number of times. So the value must be changed within the loop itself. So that statement, increment or decrement, must be there. And test condition. Test condition is actually, it's the main part of the loop. If a loop do not have the test condition, the loop will execute for infinite time and there will be no termination at all. And if such situation arises at the time of programming, the program will be uninterrupted, unterminated program. And after that, execution must be stopped by pressing Control Escape or Control Break or this kind of keys. Or you have to directly stop the compiler or IDE. So this is your iterative statements. Then we have the jump statements. In the jump section, there are three types of jump, like break, continue, and return. So jumping, I have told you people, jump. Here it's forward jump. That means from statement 1, it's directly going to the statement 3. So this is the forward jump. And here the programmer has skipped the statement 2. Type conversion. This is a very interesting topic of any programming. Suppose a variable is there in the programming and it is stored in integer. Now there is a situation that integer type data cannot store the fraction part, but suddenly, for example, there are marks evaluation. Some teachers, they have given marks in fractional form, like 4.5, 3.5, like that. But initially, the programmer has designed the program in this way that there is no fractional part. But gradually, due to the user's need or users flexibility, there are some teachers or evaluators, they have given fractional marks. So fractional marks, how to store that fractional marks into the program? Yes, type conversion is the solution for that. In this case, integer data can be converted to floating type data. That means real data, where we can store the fractional part also. 3.5, 4.5. If this is the way an examiner has given marks to a student, so we cannot ignore all the marks, all the fractional part, because at the grand total there will be a huge difference if we are ignoring all the fractional parts. So that is the way how we can convert any integer data to fractional data, that means floating type data. So how to do that? There are two ways conversion. One is the casting, another is actually one is casting done by the compiler, another is casting done by the programmer. So implicit type conversion and explicit type conversion. And so here we can convert integer to float. You can see in the diagram, any integer can be converted to float. So how it is written? Suppose a is equal to b, and here a is float, b is integer. So we want to convert b to float. So in this case, how we will write the statement? A is equal to, within parenthesis, my first bracket, we will write float and then b, semicolon. So this way the statement will be there. So in this case, the value of b will be converted to float, then it will be stored into the variable a. So how it will be written? A is equal to first parenthesis float, float, and then b, semicolon. So value of b, though b is integer, the value of b will be converted to float first, and then it will be converted, it will be stored into the float variable a. But here in this case, since b is integer, b cannot store the fractional part, because suppose marks are coming to b, so b cannot store the value, fractional part value, but a can store. So reverse things. Suppose b is equal to, suppose what we are, suppose b we are calculating, suppose in this case. B earlier it was integer, but now b we have declared b as floating. So in this case, b can store the fractional part. And the earlier example, suppose a is equal to float b and b is integer, b cannot store the fractional part initially. And ultimately, when we will typecast the normal integer to float, only suppose value of v is 3, value of a will be 3.0. But if we want the fractional part data also, fraction part, then b must be in the floating type. So when it will be converted to floating type, then b will store the 3.5 value and then it will be shifted to a. So there are certain issues in case of type conversion. Another very important part of typecasting is character can be converted to integer. Suppose one variable is there, character c. If we are storing c into integer, suppose int b, if we are shifting the value of c to b, the integer value, that means the ASCII code of the particular character, will be stored into the integer variable. And this way actually our keyboard works. In keyboard, different keys are there. Suppose you have pressed capital A, so ultimately capital A will not be responded as character. The value of the capital A, that means 65, ASCII value 65 will be stored inside the integer variable. So there are different programming scenarios where typecasting is used, type conversions are used. Then we have garbage collection. That is also important part of programming. Garbage collection, as I have told you, a variable is declared, but its value is not initialized. In that case, that may contain some garbage values. So garbage collection is similar to that. Garbage collection is what? An object is used, but now it has no use at all. So we have to clear the memory, whichever allocated to the object, that must be cleared for future use. So that is actually garbage collection. If that is not done in the programming itself, what will be there in the memory? Memory will be totally jammed, and there will be no problem at all, but memory, total memory will be, for the programming will be less, because if there are 1000 objects created and all the objects are occupying the memory, then memory will be slower in some cases. So garbage collection is very important part. Once the object is used, that part must be cleared in the programming itself. And that's why you might have seen another option is there in programming. One is constructor and another is destructor. Constructor means it initializes the object, and destructor, it destructs the object, and destructor ultimately clears up the memory spaces which is allocated to that particular object. So garbage collection is very important topic from the space point of view. Parameter passing, when methods are there in the programming, then parameters are also very important. Parameters are the inputs of any method. So there may be simple type of parameters and some object type of parameters. And the parameters can be passed in two ways. One is calling by value, call by value, another is call by reference. Two types of things are there. We'll have examples for that. This is the example. You can use this code and you can check it in the online compiler. This is call by reference. Then we are having the recursion. Recursion means a method which calls itself. A method which calls itself, and in this process actually the innermost, suppose if you consider this outer rectangle is actually one method. So that method has the same method inside that, then same method inside that. 3 layers of method calling is there. In this case, the innermost method will be completed first. It will be executed first, then outer one, then outermost. So this way it will be considered. And here it is there are some rules for recursion, 1 2 3 4 5 rules, and this is the example factorial of a number which is calculated using recursion. Here you can see fact is a method which has a parameter n, that means the input, and in the body of this method, this is the body. In the body of the fact, again fact is called, this fact n minus 1. That means every time for fact 5, suppose fact 5, again it will call fact 4. Then for fact 4, factorial 3 will be called. Then for factorial 3, factorial 2 will be called. Factorial 2, it will call factorial 1, and factorial 1, for factorial 1, factorial 0 will be called. But here one condition is there, n is equal to 1. That means it will not go for below 1. But the point. So if it is 1, then it will return directly 1. Because for factorial, we know, suppose factorial of 5 is equal to 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. But 0 will not be there. 0 means the whole product will be 0. So that's why that condition is there. So this is one recursion example. You can check it. Exceptions in Java. That is again one of the important part of any object-oriented programming. Exceptions are nothing but it's little bit related to error. So exception, what is exception? Here you can see exception is an abnormal condition that arises in the code sequence. Exceptions occur during compile time or runtime. Both can be possible. Throwable is the superclass in the exception hierarchy. And compile time errors occur due to incorrect syntax. And there may be runtime errors happen when user enters incorrect input, resource is not available, logic error that was not fixed. So in the exceptions, there are 3 parts. One is the try portion. This is the try portion. Then we have the catch. That means when some error will be there, in this case, in the try portion, then automatically the exception, first exception will be called, or it will automatically be called and will be executed. There may be number of catch statements, exception 1, exception 2, exception 3, like that. And this is the final exception. From final exception, actually it executes with all the exceptions. So that is the fashion. Here exception types are there: throwable, exceptions, error. Then there are maybe interrupted exception, runtime exceptions, arithmetic exceptions, null pointer exception. These are the types. Arithmetic exception, we will see one example here. Suppose if we are dividing any variable by 0, here x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 0, and z is equal to x by y, that means 10 divided by 0. So in mathematics, it's not possible to divide any variable by 0. So ultimately there will be exceptions in this code, and through this try block it will be detected, and automatically the exception from the catch portion will be called for. And get message, that means from the try there will be some message from the programming compiler side, and that message will be printed in the screen. So get message is a method available to exception objects. As its name suggests, it gets the error message associated with the exceptions. So these are there, and this is the example of the exceptions. This is arithmetic exception. So that is the end of our class 5. I have already shared the class material of class 5, and we have only one class left. That will be the last class of Unit 3. So hope you are enjoying the online classes. If you have any confusion, any doubt, you can contact me in my email ID, or in the group also you can contact in the WhatsApp group PGDBI. So thank you all of you for viewing this video.